وقل رب زدني علما.
All right. So why study poetry? I've discussed this in detail in the past, and so I won't get into as much detail or as many examples this time as I have in the past. If you look up the prosody course that I taught through Siblings of Ilm on YouTube, you will find a good discussion there. But what I want to bring to our attention is that you look at a number of personalities among the Salaf and among the luminaries of our Imams, and just some early personalities like Sayyidina Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, and Imam Shafi'i rahimahullahu ta'ala. They were all narrators of poetry, and there is, at least in the early formative age of Islamic disciplines, there is a correlation that exists between memorizing poetry and having an interpretive ability of nusus. Nusus here meaning the text of the Quran and Hadith. And so, I mean, that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense, because if you think about it, the idea is that the basic principle of Imam Shafi'i, as an example, is that the Quran is in Arabic, as it says itself, and as such has to be understood according to the language of the Arabs. And so Ibn Abbas, Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anhuma, and Imam Shafi'i were all narrators of poetry, and Imam Shafi'i was a narrator of poetry even before he was an imam of Islamic knowledge. And so, really, if you think about it, the Quran, understanding the Quran means understanding Arabic as it was spoken or as it was understood at the time of revelation. And in addition to other things, I mean, I'm not saying that's all that's involved, but that's a large part of it. And so as such, someone who has absorbed and internalized the Arabic language has at least one major prerequisite to understanding understanding. I don't want to use the word unpacking, but to how should I say, contextualizing and the Quran and the Hadith in the language that they were spoken at the time. Obviously, there are other requirements as well that wouldn't be a sufficient qualification, but it is a necessary qualification. Now, why study poetry? Well, there are two reasons. And the first one, if we can accept the idea of fiqh, meaning understanding, and obviously the Islamic meaning of it as jurisprudence is also peripherally intended. But mainly when I say fiqh here, when I'm going to say fiqh, I mean understanding, but I'm using that term on purpose. So we could, you know how there's hard politics or hard power and soft power, right? And so we could say that there's a hard fiqh and a soft fiqh reason to study Arabic poetry. The hard fiqh reason, meaning that I can pull out the, those big imam argument muscles and flex them in front of you and say, see, this is what the imam so-and-so says, and I can prove it to you that it's an obligation. And the other one, the soft fiqh, is appealing to my ability to wave my hands and convince you guys of my own ideas. And so there are two reasons to study Arabic poetry. The first being to preserve the Quranic miracle, and that is arguably a hard fiqh issue. So I mean, imams have spoken about that issue. And so learning the Quran and the mu'allaqat at the very least is a fard kifaya. Okay, so it's a everyone knows what a fard kifaya is, a communal obligation. Do I need to explain that concept? It's okay if that's not clear to you. Does everyone understand the fard kifaya concept, the communal obligation? Okay. طيب, alrighty. طيب, so as a hard fiqh issue, we can demonstrate using the statements of imams and of even later imams. I mean, I'm not just going to quote Jurjani, but also even later imams have said that studying the Jahili poetry or the poetry of the Asr al-Ihtijaj, the authoritative era of Arabic, is a fard kifaya. And then they differ on studying later poets. But so at the very least, this is, so I'm going to make a statement that isn't 100% accurate. I'm saying it as a way of drawing a general picture in your mind. So fiqh is based on hadith and Quran, of course. So fiqh is based on nusus from the Quran, ayatul ahkam or ahadithul ahkam, and that is the stuff that fiqh is made of, okay? And poetry is a large part of the stuff that two Islamic disciplines are based on, and those are tafsir and i'jaz, okay? So studying Jahili poetry or the poetry of the authoritative era, okay, which is, if you don't know what the authoritative era is, asking a question, but it's approximately 150 before Hijrah to 150 after Hijrah. And so that's when Arabs from certain locales and under certain conditions and what have you, where the fusaha among the Arabs, those who were seen as speaking well, when their during that era, it was their language that was considered how should I say, a basis for deriving grammatical rules in addition to the Quran and other sources. And so so studying Arabic poetry of the of Asr al-Ihtijaj and of the Jahiliyyah in particular is a fard kifaya, and it is just like fiqh is based on hadith and ayat al-ahkam, then tafsir and i'jaz is the parent discipline. I'jaz is the parent discipline of balagha. So it's interesting that balagha was the child of the discipline of i'jaz, and so in a sense also balagha is derived from the study of, or uses Arabic poetry, Jahili poetry, as the substance that it, in a similar way that fiqh uses hadith, so as a source of information. Would Imam Shafi'i's poetry fall into that or out, as he was born 150 after Hijrah? So there are some exceptions, and so Imam Shafi'i is considered a hujjah as long as the poetry is actually authentically attributed to him. What is the Arabic name for the authoritative era? Asrul Ihtijaj. Yes, thank you, Sheikh Shaheen. Now, so the two reasons again to study poetry are: one, to preserve the Quranic miracle, and two, to preserve the Arab psyche.